Hello everyone and welcome to your NARSA weekly update for the week commencing Monday the 2nd of June 2025. It's Gary here again. Thank you very much as always for taking the time to join me today. And this is convention month. This is when the rubber absolutely hits the road, and with that I have a very, very special guest who is joining me today, and it is none other than Colin Ferguson Bowman, who you might know as the president of the Orlando Rangers Supporters Club, who are, of course, the hosts of the 2025 convention. As you know, I typically don't have guests on the NARSA weekly update, just kind of mostly because I'm kind of lazy and I don't want to manage someone else's calendar. But, well, Colin basically insisted on coming on to the show by saying I should be on the pod on Monday, and then I asked him why, and he says, I would like to inject some enthusiasm, which, I don't know about you, but that's a bit of an odd way to endear yourself to get the invite. But we'll get to talking about everything that I would typically talk about, and of course we'll get going on the convention. So the first and most important thing from a Rangers perspective over the last week, of course, was the formal confirmation of the 49 Enterprises Consortium takeover of the club, which was announced last Friday. There's been lots of communication. Actually, really, there has been lots of communication coming out of the club in terms of happenings and what's going on. And I wonder if that's a newfound angle of the new consortium to say, we're going to tell you what we can tell you, when we can tell you, and you get that sort of information. But first and foremost, Colin, welcome to the show. Thank you very much for joining me. And what are your thoughts on the takeover?
It can't be bad. That's my main reaction to this.
Yeah.
For years, we've been looking for someone to come in that's not going to buy the club for £1 and be serious investors, serious businessmen. And I think we've got it. We've seen how American sports are ran and the franchise system over here. And, hopefully these guys are financially creative to get through all the UEFA, SPFL, all that red tape.
Yeah, I think you're right. And one of the key things, I've been with the NARSA executive now since 2012, and one of the key themes, regardless of who has been at the helm of the club that we've dealt with, some good, some not so much, has been their desire to try and, I guess probably tap in to the North American market. And what that was a wee bit one way, where they're saying we want to sell as much as we could possibly sell in North America, whereas this is a wee bit different, where this consortium is based in and has their heart in North American sports. So there might end up being this sort of reciprocal way of doing it, where they're going to bring some of the best and brightest ideas over. Some of them might seem a wee bit outlandish or off the wall, but we'll have that opportunity to be able to say afterwards, we're actually doing some good stuff over there as well, because there is obviously communication and things in the press and media about it happening as well. So it might end up being that wonderful blend as we're going forward. One of the things for me that I was thinking about on the weekend there, kind of Friday and Saturday mostly, was, we now have a new chairman in Andrew Kavanagh. We have a new vice chairman, which we've kind of dabbled with the vice chairman roles over the years. Sometimes we've had it, sometimes we haven't. And we've got Parag Marath, I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name. So he's chairman of Leeds and vice chairman of Rangers, which is a different situation than we've known before. But one of the things I was thinking about was essentially the far-reaching implications or experience of people who have since left the board. So, for example, we've got two former chairmen, and Dave King and John Bennett, who had significant shareholdings. Dave was, until Friday, our largest stakeholder, of course, and he is, of course, NARSA's honorary chairman for all of the great work that he did back in 2015 to help us. And both of these guys now have no formal ties to the club. So yes, there's this excitement of what's happening now, and mostly everyone is looking towards the future. But these guys are blue noses through and through. They have stepped up and stepped in when it was required. As I mentioned, Dave and his team, the Three Bears, did what they did to wrestle over control back in 2015. John Bennett, he started with some promise in terms of what we hoped he was going to do. He's a wonderful orator, and we thought this guy's got some gumption, and he just didn't have a successful tenure in the role at all, which ultimately culminated in him leaving. But I think I'm more so just thinking, these guys are human beings. These guys did their best. These guys didn't have to do what they did. And, they had to put their flak jackets on for a lot of the time. And now they're gone. So I guess I say that as a thank you to the outgoing folks that made this deal possible. It was well chronicled that Paul Murray, former director, was the guy that did the initial, introductions of Andrew and Parag as well. And, I think that, obviously I hope they're satisfied with the financial outcomes for them and their businesses and their families as they go forward. But there has to be a human cost to that as well. And I don't know if anybody's thinking about that, but as I say, it's more of a thank you from NARSA on behalf of the NARSA membership to these guys as they go forward.
Yeah, I think the hardest thing in life, and it's probably the worst decision you ever make, is to put your money into something you love. Yeah. Because you don't necessarily make the best decisions. You certainly don't get the reward that money could make elsewhere.
Yeah.
And they should be thanked for the fact that we are here, and it hasn't gone unnoticed, and it may have been a thankless task on the field, but obviously there's something there. That, what did they pay, £180 million basically for 51%? That's a big valuation.
Yeah, absolutely it is. So great stuff done by these guys, and hopefully the legacy that they have will be solidified over time. So in terms of the regular content, the games segment, obviously no Rangers games on any level that we get to talk about, but did you happen to catch the Champions League final on the weekend there? I've never seen a Champions League final like that. Typically, they're a wee bit dire, they're a wee bit boring, and just a little bit of an anticlimax for the most part. And PSG, boy oh boy, after being pretenders for, it feels like 2 decades, where they have all the investment, all the players and such, they end up just getting in the right manager at the right time for this right group of players, and they thrashed Inter Milan 5-0.
Yeah, I have a different opinion on that. Same as when Man City won it a couple of years ago. But from our point of view, there's the hope that having rich ownership brings you.
Yeah. I did actually, during the game, I think it was maybe 2 or 3-0, and I checked where the final was next year, just in the off chance that we have a really good recruitment in the summer and we need to start thinking about booking flights. Hey, dare to dream. In terms of shout-outs, got a few. This week, the first one is to commemorate the passing of former Ranger Willie Stevenson, and the article on the Rangers website said, everyone at Rangers is saddened to have learned of the passing of former player Willie Stevenson at the age of 85. 85 just seems young to be passing these days. It's not an age now for me. Maybe it's because I'm getting older, but it's an age where you're kind of like, there's still some years left there. But anyway, it says Stevenson made more than 100 appearances for the Light Blues, lifting the Scottish League title in 1959 and the Scottish Cup the following season. After leaving Ibrox in 1962, he moved to Bill Shankly's Liverpool, where he won 2 First Division titles, 1 FA Cup and 3 Charity Shields, before stints with Stoke City, Tranmere Rovers, Vancouver Whitecaps, and finishing his career with Macclesfield Town. What a career. The thoughts of everyone at Rangers are with Willie's family and friends at this sad time. It's great that the club still keep tabs on former players and are able to do that tribute. That's something hopefully that helps with the ongoing grieving for the family and friends. So, of course, on behalf of NARSA, we would like to pass on our condolences to Willie's family and friends. I'll switch gears here and make this one a wee bit more personal. Leo, I think I maybe mentioned, if you're a regular listener, that Leo had taken up rugby this last wee while, joined the high school rugby team, did really well in that, and his high school rugby season, finished early this past Friday with a defeat, quite a heavy defeat actually, in the semi-final of the City Championships. We were really hoping that they were going to be able to pull one out, but the other team had a really good handle on the dark arts of rugby, just leaving a wee bit more in there. And there was a few boys that were great. Leo was in grade 10. There was a bunch of boys at grade 11 in the other team, and it's such a difference in terms of size and such. But he did really, really well. Actually enjoyed it. Has joined and signed up for the Calgary Saints Rugby Club for summer and early autumn rugby as well. So I thought he was not a fairy, or not. He doesn't. I didn't think he liked to get hit so much. He wasn't into the rough and tumble, but he has absolutely embraced it, and it doesn't mind the aches and pains and strains that come with that. So it was one of these things. He did play golf yesterday with his pals, and he got his first solo birdie of his entire golf career as well. So he's doing well in the sports just there. And one other, I'll just go back to passing on condolences, and I got a message from Sandra Hawthorne. I think it might have been on the NARSA executive WhatsApp chat that we've got, where she said, I just heard of the passing of Ray Newall from the Melbourne City Loyal RSC, and Sandra had met him when a bunch of the crew went over to Australia in 2002 for what would have been, I assume, that then the ESTA convention. That noise was not from my side, that was from Colin's side. And Sandra says he was a lovely man and was very sad to hear of his passing. So, if Sandra remembers someone for almost 25 years, that's an indelible memory that she has there with him, which is great. So I would like to pass on again NARSA's sincere condolences to Ray's family and friends and everyone at Melbourne City Loyal Rangers Supporters Club. And speaking of the Melbourne City Loyal, they are having their culture weekend, of course, November 21st to 22nd, with Ian Ferguson, Gary Stevens, Stuart Monroe all going, boat cruise, gala dinner, all sorts of stuff like that going on. Okay, now on to the meat and bones of the convention talk. And I can tell you officially that from today, it is 10 days and 1 week until we descend upon Kissimmee, Florida. Colin is shaking his head and giving himself a bit of a face palm that it's coming up so quickly here. And that's, of course, next week, June the 12th to the 15th at Omni at Champions Gate. And some news that we have that we shared in the last week is that the chairman of Rangers Football Club is joining us. Well, the former chairman is joining us. Fraser Thornton will be there, who's now confirmed as being a board member. Of course, we literally actually almost communicated on Thursday night that the chairman of Rangers Football Club was joining us, and then we just kind of missed it. And we were trying to put copy on the social media post, and then I said, look, actually, let's just wait till tomorrow, just in case anything funky happens. I had zero insider knowledge at all. And then the next day it was confirmed that he is no longer the chairman, as I mentioned earlier. Andrew Kavanagh but he is joining us in his capacity as former chairman and as a director, and it will be good to get his perspective on the whole process, on his role within the process and the experiences that he had through the transition period as well. So that'll be really good when it gets to Q&A time to try and figure out what that looks like. And Fraser has been with us now, what would that be, almost 6 months, 6.5 months, something like that. And we haven't heard too much from him, so it will be good to actually get a chance to meet him to make sure that he is indeed a real person, and then get a chance to ask him some questions. So something quite exciting from the Rangers side there. And we did also communicate our Old Town Makeover, which is being hosted by the Orlando Rangers Sports Club. That's what I said, takeover.
You said makeover.
Did I say makeover?
Yeah, you got a fashion problem.
I'm big time into the fashion. I meant to say the Old Town Takeover. My apologies. And that's on Wednesday, a week on Wednesday, June the 11th. And that's down at Old Town Kissimmee, starting at 7 p.m, meeting at Southern Breeze, which is one of the pubs or bars down there. The magazine, as I mentioned last week, is now completely filled and gone to print. And we are in the process of firming up basically the logistics around the itinerary for the entertainment over each of the 3 nights, and now literally getting down to working on the play settings for the grand banquet and such. The football jerseys have been ordered. There is still some spots available. I think we're up to 20 players now in terms of the football, so still looking for another half dozen or so that we've got a couple of subs and such, and we'll get that organised as well. You can see the information on that on the NARSA website. The golf is sold out. We are actually looking for an extra tee time because we have one additional golfer. And if we can do that, then we might be able to accept another couple of golfers. But for now, it is sold out. And we now know who we have coming from Rangers Football Club. Of course, as I said, the former chairman is joining us, and a communications fellow called Allan Potts is joining us, and one of the partnership guys, Elliot Brown, is also joining us as well. So we have a wee bit of a heavy representation there. So different angles and different things can be covered by these guys. And just a reminder, if you're on a UK passport, you need an ESTA to get into the United States. So if you have not done that yet, please get that done, because you don't want any hassles at the border. I'm sure most of us have heard about some sort of people having some challenges in terms of getting in. So Colin, your thoughts on the convention and the planning and the preparation and where we're at and how you're feeling overall.
Okay, well, I am feeling optimistic that we're all going to have a great time. In fact, I'm going to say right now, I'm guaranteeing if you embrace this convention and everything we're offering, you're going to have a really, really good time. As Gary was saying, the takeover for Old Town Kissimmee, it's an amazing little place. It was built in the 80s. It resembles colonial America, but it's all modern bars, restaurants, shops. Next door, there's a huge, big theme park called Fun Spot, but I wouldn't advise going on there. I would concentrate more on the drinking. We've got our new NARSA banner up so you can find us easily. Please wear blue. Let's just turn this whole little place fully Rangers. There's live music. I can't attest to how good it is, but there's a stage there. And there's also a Camaro and Corvette little car show thing they do every Wednesday. They have a different theme. This week it's Camaros and Corvettes. Yeah. I don't like them, but hey, I'm sure a lot of you do.
Yeah.
And there's a moonshine place. There's loads of bars. There's haunted house. I mean, my description says it's like Blackpool without the tower, and Blackpool. So,
Yeah.
So that would be a good night. And to say it's casual, you're not restricted to one place. I want you to go and explore the whole thing, pick up your little $300 coupon book, and just really have a nice, relaxing build into the chaos. No, not chaos. What would we say? The excitement that is going to happen on the next few nights.
Yeah, it's going to be great. The amount of Colin and I have been kind of joined at the hip now for, it seems like an age. We were talking about this just prior to recording today, and that's why it becomes a bit more surreal that in just over a week's time we're going to be in each other's company having a beer and saying, well, this is it, and what will be, and we've got a lot of stuff planned. It's really... It's a different experience each time we organise a convention, and my experience with the host clubs is very unique each and every time. Some people are a wee bit more hands-off, some people are a wee bit more hands-on, some people are a wee bit easier or a wee bit more challenging to deal with, but it's been an absolute pleasure, honestly, working with you on this. It hasn't been the easiest of circumstances or conditions that we've done this in, and that's another story for another day, but the event in and of itself has been very well planned, very well thought out, and we're going to have a great time. What about, I know that there's still some logistics getting organised, but what about the Sunday event here? What can people look forward to? Now, here's the key. I'm flying back on the Sunday evening, and every time I spend any time with my family, they're like, wow, how are you going? Because I'm coming down on my own. There's no other family here to support me this time. And they're just of the ilk of, you're not going to make your flight, you might not even get on the flight. And I'm like, wait, what do you I'm working at this event, and I'm going to be there, but they're kind of convinced that there's going to be some hilarity that's going to ensue with me having to try and leave the pub about 3:00. But I'm placing myself in your hands to make sure I get out there at that time. But other than that, what can we expect on the Sunday?
Well, there's no chance you're getting out of there at 3. None whatsoever. So let me just say that. And if all your family are listening, I would apologise, but no apologies given whatsoever.
Oh dear.
So this convention is interesting for us. As you know, we're Orlando RSC, but we actually started in Kissimmee. Mm-hmm. So taking the convention back to Kissimmee is really a spiritual return for us, because we spent decades in Kissimmee, or Orlando adjacent, as I call it. But our pub, Murphy's, is in Orlando, right in the heart of I-Drive. And so we're setting up to have a really good day there. There will be food specials. They do a really good full breakfast. There's a roast dinner in the afternoon that they offer as well. And we'll be decorated up fully with all our regalia over the years. There'll be specialty drinks promotions. Heart and Hand are doing a live show. They'll have soccer on the soccer on the TVs. God, I hate that, man, American. And there may be a few other little special treats, but the most important thing is the camaraderie and the friendship. And this is a time where, for me, convention's over. It's a success. I'm knackered. I just want to get my brain in gear and just have a really good time. I'll be DJing and karaokeing as well for anyone who wants to do that. And it's going to be great, you know. Yeah. And please do not judge a pub by its name, you know. We have the Lady Queen on the wall. We have the King on the wall. We have more Union Jacks than you can ever think of. So, yeah, come along. It's going to be a good time.
I love it. I mean, the flyer for that should probably be out sometime this week. Certainly at some point before the event in and of itself. But it's going to be a great time. I hope you're joking about me not leaving by 3:00. I'm going to have to order an Uber or something to make sure that particular event happens, or I'm in trouble. And in terms of, I want to share a bit of a story about the Saturday night entertainment. You know, we typically source a local band on the Saturday night. From the very beginning, Colin says, there's a band called the Hooligans. We need the Hooligans. And these guys do Epcot. These guys do some really cool stuff at Disney. They're great. They're going to do a really good British invasion selection sort of thing, or 80s, 90s, things like that. And we had a meeting with the band, what was that, like a couple of weeks ago, basically just to kind of finalise the logistics. And then we got to the end of the conversation, and they said, okay, what band do you want? We were talking about the set list, weren't we? And what band do you want? And then so I'm kind of looking at Colin, and Colin's looking at me, and I think Brian was on the call, and we're like, what do you mean? Well, there's two bands. One is called the Hooligans, and the other one's called the Spasmatics, I think it was. And like, we were thinking about the one that did, and you explained Epcot, the British, the 80s, 90s, like that sort of thing. And they're like, oh, okay, that'll be the Hooligans then. That's absolutely fine. And we said, what's the difference between the two? And they said, there's no difference. It's just the same guys in the band. It's just a different set list. Oh, I couldn't get that out of my head afterward. I'm like, what an odd interaction.
It's like we go to Epcot all the time to do the drinking round the world. And one of the stops we do is in the British United Kingdom area. Yeah. And they have the bandstand set up. And over the years, they've had different bands doing, as you say, the British invasion. And they change the name slightly as that band gets asked to leave and another band comes in. But this band have been there for a long time now, at least 4 years, you know. And they do the Oasis, they do Queen, they do all kinds of, stuff. And 4 sets a day, and they're really good. So, but they're not called the Hooligans at Epcot. So they have some British relevant name there.
Right.
I know they have the Spasmatics, but as I say, when it's the same band, they just dress different.
Yeah.
And as you say, Spasmatics is definitely the 80s, 90s, Devo, all that kind of stuff. Whereas this one goes right the way through from 60s to current day rock and, the classics and things like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was, considering they'd already sent me all their promotional materials to include in the magazine as the Hooligans, I was, seriously taken aback as well.
It was odd. It was comedy. I mean, I have to say, I think they were playing a gig the night before, and it was relatively early in the morning, Orlando time or Florida time, and they looked like they had a good night the night before. So let's maybe put it down to that. But really looking forward to seeing them there. And in terms of other business that we have going on at the convention, of course, this is our AGM, and we are hosting that on a Saturday afternoon for NARSA members, and we will probably have a wee bit of a more intimate Q&A with the VIPs that are there just after that as well, before we go and get ready for the Walter Smith Memorial Grand Banquet. And one of the key parts of the AGM this year is, of course, the election that we are having, and we have a number of positions open right now. So as I've been saying for the last few weeks, if you're interested in even finding out a wee bit more about the time commitment, about the type and style of skill sets that are required and such, please don't hesitate to reach out to me at rangersSCC@hotmail.com. That's 2 S's and 2 C's, and I will give you some information, and hopefully that will allow you to make a decision. Colin, are you going to be interested in joining us on the NARSA Executive?
There's so many words in my head that I can't use because you're going to be bleeping this like crazy. No. But I will save your butt again by this minute by just saying, Gary, isn't it remiss that you haven't mentioned Kevin Thelwell yet?
I'm getting to the communication section next.
I saved you again.
I'm getting to the communication section next. So what you're telling me in terms of the NASA executive is you're telling me there's a chance. That's what I heard from your silence is acquiescence there. In terms of communication, thank you for stealing my thunder there, Colin. We don't have a Gers guide. I assume either the Gers guide has gone the way of the dodo, or it's just something that they'll use for when the season is actually active. But we do have a formal new appointment who started today, which is, of course, Kevin Thelwell, who joined us after the expiration of his contract from Everton. And it wasn't very long after the takeover was announced on Friday that, I think it was yesterday, the news broke that we have Nils Koppen, who was the head of recruitment and then became technical director around about, I think he's been with us for about 18 months, but he's been in the technical director role for about 6 or 7 or 8 maybe months, something like that. And he is leaving the club. And he is being replaced by a fellow called Dan Purdy, who Kevin Thelwell has worked with, of course, at Everton. Now, Everton are doing well now. Certainly had a good second half of the season after David Moyes went back there, but they haven't had their troubles to seek. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, obviously having Premiership experience and hopefully access to different types and styles of networks that we maybe haven't tapped into too well will be a thing. But from a relative mid-table Premiership team, I hope it doesn't become... I hope these appointments work out. I don't know enough about them. I don't know enough about the roles, quite frankly, if I'm being really honest about what they have to do. But coming with good pedigree is one thing, but Everton is not a winning club in terms of there's a deep-rooted desire to win, and possibly that's why they're leaving. Who knows what that looks like? But your thoughts on the appointments? Do you know much about them, Colin?
Not a lot. I mean, as you say, Everton are a weird Tottenham-like team, where now they're going to have this fantastic stadium, fantastic fan base. Oh, sorry about that. Fantastic fan base, but absolutely no winning pedigree. Yeah. And they've brought in some great players over the years, but not been able to do anything with them. So I don't know. And it's not like they're bringing in players from Southeast Asia or untapped markets, South Americans. It's still very much European based.
Yeah.
So I don't know what we're going to see. I mean, I really don't. Maybe we'll get another Cyril Dessers with his trophy this weekend for Nigeria winning, and just keep bringing winners in.
That's what we need. We do need winners in for sure. And who knows? I know that Cyril Dessers has been very, very divisive on our NARSA chat, and certainly on other online forums that I get wind of or maybe check out now and again. Who knows if he's better with better players around him? I mean, he was our top scorer and almost 30 goals for the season. Some of the goals were absolute peaches, but he gets more maligned for some of the odd misses that he has. I think that's probably the most generous way to say it. Who knows if he's going to be there or not? But I don't know how much these, the types and styles of technical directors and such would be influenced by fan sentiment. Or not, and whether they actually have a finger on the pulse on that, who knows? And in fact, even in terms of fan media, you and I were chatting about this briefly yesterday, in terms of what their approach will be with fan media. Will they like to engage with us? Is that the North American model? Is that something that they're going to? Because obviously they're still a UK team, of course. So we'll see what that looks like. And in terms of other happenings in the club, it was announced just this morning. I'm not going to go through the whole article because it's kind of dry, to be perfectly honest. But we have a number of representatives. I counted 7. Maybe my numbers are off. That have been appointed to various SFA and SPFL committees. And when I say it's kind of dry, it's not. These appointments aren't going to make the referee see the ball being over the line against Hibs. It's not directly correlated to absolute success or unbiasedness on the field, but it's getting an opportunity to influence at various, audit committees and other committees that are influencing the game. And we did have a strong presence and all that sort of stuff, and it's just waned over the years. And look where we're at. And of course, we have Patrick Stewart, our CEO, who is looking to be appointed to the SPFL board, where the election is the 23rd of June as well. So good to see us making inroads into the kind of foundations of the game, Colin.
Yeah, no. Years ago, we were heavily involved in all the decision making that went on, and since 2012, we haven't. Yeah. And we've had limited, and we've had 1 or 2 here or there, but this looks like a whole block going in, and the fact that the club are allowing their executives to take on these secondary roles cannot be a bad thing, and must say something for their view of the Scottish game and things that need to be. They've definitely been clued up on what the issues are. There's no doubt on that. And going back to your earlier point about fan sentiment and who fans like and don't like, NFL ownership are very cut and dried in the way they do things and see things. And look at the amount of your favorite player that you thought was going to wear that jersey over here forever, and it's like, boom, no, sorry, you're not bigger than the game, and we love our fans, but with all due respect, they're not getting paid to make the decisions, and their life is not, their job does not depend on this team being successful. So I think there will be an interesting dynamic here, which a lot of our fans are going to find very hard to swallow.
Yeah, it'll be very, very interesting. I think it's going to be one of these things where there's going to be, what would you say, testing times, trying time, interesting times coming up where, they don't have a track record with us yet. So we're going to be on them. We're going to be questioning everything. And if the communication that's come out from the club since the open letter or the announcement, then the open letter on Friday, and then the stuff that's been sprinkled out to us over the weekend, if that continues and we at least understand what they're doing and why they're doing it, whether we agree or disagree, it's at least a step in the right direction in terms of our perceptions of how they're doing and what they're doing.
Yeah, and we have a lot of players that are, we've been releasing players right, left and centre, but we also have, 3 or 4 coming back to us that were very unsuccessful in their stints here and clearly did not set the world alight when they were on their loan periods either. So it's going to be interesting how this squad is going to get put together and taken apart.
Well, talking about that very factor, obviously at the time of recording right now, it is 9:53 a.m. for me, and at the time of recording, we still don't have any understanding of what the new manager situation looks like. When Kevin Thelwell had did a press conference or released a press article, what he had said that the number one thing is to get a new head coach in, and we're working very hard on that in the coming days. And that was the thing that really highlighted it for me, was in the coming days. So we can expect, I would imagine, that the appointment to be made this week. Your thoughts on who you would like it to be?
I have zero thoughts on this, simply because I don't know enough about the candidates to make an informed decision. Russell Martin seems like a not very inspiring choice. The Ancelotti boy gets rave reviews on everything, but how much has he contributed? Remember, the Ancelottis didn't do anything at Everton, which is, we're back to them again. It's a closer makeup to us. Gerrard seems to be out of the running. I know he was kind of a sentimental favourite, but also very divisive in that. And then I can't remember his name, but the manager of Ajax, who literally is only available because he blew the league. They were so far ahead in the league that I don't know how they managed to blow it so badly. It's not like the Dutch league has 20 teams that are all competing for it. It's 3 or 4, and if you're that far ahead, you shouldn't be losing.
Yeah.
But then that might bring. I don't know. I'm not really overly inspired by any of the 4 choices that are being mentioned.
Maybe that ends up becoming a good thing, because then expectations are tempered quite early on at the beginning. There's pros and cons of every management situation. It will be very, very interesting to see how much. We need someone. It's less than, I guess it's 3 weeks today, isn't it, where they come back for pre-season training, something like that, in the 20-something, 23rd maybe. So I think it's 3 weeks today, and that's not a long time.
The first round of the Champions League draws are next week, or it may be even this week. I'm not sure. I saw the Linfield boys were talking about it, but it's coming up fast.
Time is of the essence, and it's not a lot of time. And back to what I said earlier about the human aspect of the takeover in terms of John Bennett and Dave King specifically, this is someone who has to move house, move the family, try and figure out what they're doing, get a driver's license, like whatever it is they have to do, in the background, which is distracting. And, their one and only main job, the club will support them, of course, but their one and only main job is to build a squad that's going to be competitive from day one. And that's a bit of a tall order.
I don't like that excuse. I actually hate that excuse. These are professional football people that make a living by moving from place to place to place. This isn't like we're going to be picking up somebody that spent 30 years in one place and now it's a whole big culture shock. They're programmed to get on and off of planes all the time, to be hardly home, just the same day, different country almost.
Yeah.
So I hate it when people say, oh, well, the manager needs time to settle. It's a weak excuse for me. They're professionals. They get paid a fortune, managers or players. It's not like me bringing in a new warehouse manager that I'm importing from Calgary and got to spend like 6 months getting used to the heat down here.
Yeah.
That's a fair excuse.
I hear you, and I wasn't making any excuses for them. I was just acknowledging the fact that they're human beings, and that stuff takes brain capacity to be able to do it in order to, make sure you're picking the right neighbourhood, you're getting the right type and style of car and things. And I imagine it would be more distracting for some than others. And when you consider Russell Martin, say, for example, or Steven Gerrard, they would be familiar because they've already been there, geographically been there. So then it becomes less of a distraction. They can concentrate more on the job. When you've got, say, for example, Ancelotti or maybe someone else from foreign shores, it can become a kind of culture shock. You're like, what do you mean I can't have that type and style of food? Or what do you mean it's always raining? Or what do you mean I drive on this side of the road? Or whatever it looks like. Who knows? I wasn't making excuses for anyone. It's just stuff like that consumes time and energy and effort. And
as long as they don't send them to Paisley, they'll be fine.
Paisley is the most wonderful city in Europe. That's been clearly established on this podcast over the years. Just a reminder of the Rangers Ladies Lunch that is being presented by Molten Brown, and that's coming up on Friday, the 22nd of August. And the club actually did also announce on the weekend that we have some pre-season friendlies sorted out already. UEFA Champions League outfit Club Bruges, who could be a potential actual opponent for Rangers, assuming we get through the rounds that we're hoping to get through, are going to visit Ibrox on Sunday, the 6th of July, and that's a 2 p.m. UK kick-off time. And then we have Michael Carrick's Middlesbrough coming to make the trip north on Saturday, the 26th of July. And so obviously a bit of a gap in here. I don't know if that's when, I imagine they'll be going to do some warm weather stuff, or certainly some international travel there to do a camp away and maybe get some friendlies organised depending on where they go. But the pre-season starts, as I mentioned there, at 3 weeks' time, and before we know it, we're back into the regular, like the convention is history, then we're back into the regular humdrum of season life, which is the exciting part for us. Another quick reminder of the Five Stars event being held at the Doubletree Inn by Hilton in Glasgow, Saturday, January the 3rd, and they have our former management team, Barry Ferguson, Allan, McGregor, Neil McCann and Billy Dodds. The tickets are £80. For regular tickets, £120 for the VIP version of that. Okie dokie, well, that is going to do it for this particular podcast. I would like to thank very, very much Colin for joining. I hope you did indeed bring the enthusiasm that you promised or threatened that you were going to bring.
I did, but then I forgot the most important thing of being on here. Yes. And that was the excursions.
The excursions?
Yes. The reason the excursions is because we just got the deadline extended to June the 9th or 10th instead of the May the 31st. Right. So the excursions are all still available. They are different because they are giving you a taste of real Florida for a change, instead of let's go to a brewery, let's go shopping, let's see the same things that we're always seeing. So we have Gatorland, which is an amazing place. You can spend a day there easily. Then we have the Airboy experience, which you're not going to get that anywhere else. You know, it's loud and it's exciting and there's lots of things to see. And you can also do a combo of both of them if you want to really experience nature. And then Kennedy Space Center. None of you really have that anywhere. And that's an amazing day to spend, meet the astronauts, see all the rockets, see where these ships and everything are built, and actually just get a feel for how the hell does this thing get up there, do its stuff, and now they come back. That's the most amazing thing. And you can also be in the actual control room listening to the recording of the 1969 moon landing. Yes, it did happen. You know, no conspiracies here.
Sure.
And that, you know, being as old as I am, that's probably the greatest achievement man has made in my lifetime. And to actually sit in the place and listen to the recordings and watch the screens is unbelievable.
Yeah.
But so they're still available, and you've got till June the 9th to book it. And if you're not sure by then, just drop me an email and I'm sure I can accommodate you.
Perfect. Ideal. Yeah, so we'll get those details put on the show notes for there. I can attest to the Kennedy Space Center experience. I did that many, many years ago. And just to add to what you said, like the vastness of the actual site itself is just incredible. You know, the amount of space that's needed, if you pardon the pun of saying space, but the amount of, literal land space that's needed to be able to accommodate everything that happens and to get to see the size of the equipment and machinery and such to get it done. And the somewhat primitive feel of the control room now, like if you're going to build that now, it would be very, very different. I'm sure it is different now. But that, and then the recording, it's actually quite emotional, honestly, to experience that just as a wee baldy guy from Paisley, just kind of sitting in there on holiday. So if you haven't done that before, that's a genuine lifetime experience. And as you say, that the rest of the Florida experience with those other excursions is going to be dynamite.
I mean, I feel like we have a rocket launch once a week here almost. That's what it feels like nowadays. They're just going up. You look up at the sky and you're like, oh, another rocket launch. But then I remember that for people coming over, this is not a regular site that you have, and it is a big deal. And if you've never been to any of these rocket launches, if you ever get the chance when you're over, you're literally 5 miles away from the launch site, and you're watching this rocket, all the smoke, all the flame, and then off it goes. It takes so long for that noise to hit you. And then when it hits you, like, whoa, holy crap. That's like, So the rocket launches, if you get a chance, are worth, the 3 or 4 trips out there to do it because weather.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, great stuff. Excellent. So that will do it for this week, my friends. Thank you very, very much again to Colin for coming on. Maybe we'll do this again next week and give that one last wee push for the folks that are coming over, if you've got the time to do that. In the meantime, please don't hesitate to share this with someone that you think might enjoy it. And we are on the literal countdown time, to use the pun, of the rocket launches again, and it's T-minus 10 days from now until next week. Thank you very, very, very much, and all the very best. Follow.